Hi, my name is Candice Kelly and I am a homeschool mom to 3 boys. Now my oldest son graduated from our homeschool last year, but I'm currently homeschooling my younger 2 boys. We've been a homeschooling family for about 6 years now, and for the last few years I've been sharing my family's homeschooling journey on my YouTube channel, Homeschool on the Hill. Now in today's video, I'm going to be talking about homeschooling multiple ages, and I'm guessing if you're watching this video, then you probably have children in your homeschool of multiple ages, and hopefully by sharing some of my experiences with you, you can be encouraged that you can do this without shortchanging any of your children. Now, a little bit of background information about me and about my family. So when I was growing up, I attended public school pretty much kindergarten through 12th grade. My husband did as well. He was actually in the same school system his entire life. And when it came time to decide how to educate our boys, I don't really feel like it was a decision. We just went with our default, which was public school. And actually, all of my boys attended the public school that my husband grew up in. Now, I'm not going to go into why we decided to remove our kids from the public school system, but several years ago we did just that, and it's been an interesting journey so far. Now, when we began homeschooling, I took that background of public school and I applied it to our homeschool. I only knew education to look that way. The idea of different educational philosophies never occurred to me. So our homeschool looked like a bunch of textbooks and workbooks and tests and teachers' manuals and everything for 3 different kids for all of the different subjects. We had quite a collection going. And after the first couple of years of doing things that way, honestly, I felt spread thin as the homeschool parent. I just felt like I was bouncing like a ping pong ball from one kid to another and one subject to another. And I felt really spread thin. Now, I also felt kind of bored with some of the content that we were learning, and I was just a little restless in what we were doing in our homeschool, and that's when I found this amazing homeschooling community on YouTube, and other mothers were sharing their homeschooling experiences. It's the first time I was learning about different educational philosophies, and it was the first time that I was learning that you could actually combine children of different ages for different subjects. Some of you, it's something you've always known, but I didn't. All I knew was that when you were in public school, everybody was divided based on their age, and everyone would work on different things. I had no idea that you could combine children of different ages for different subjects. And so I was really inspired by what I was seeing on YouTube, and I decided I wanted to make some changes in our homeschool. Now, I have learned that when you are looking to combine children of multiple ages, there are a few things to consider. The first is age. Now, I don't say that this is the most important, but it is something to consider. So for our personal experience, we were not looking to combine our oldest, middle, and youngest. I would have liked to do that, but I just felt like that 7-year age gap was just a little too large, and at the time my oldest was going into high school, and I thought this is a big enough transition to transition into the high school years. We're not going to mess with him here, but I do want to combine the younger 2, and they are 3 years apart in age, which we found to be a really good age range. But like I said, it's not the most important thing. It's just one thing to consider, but I would also consider ability level, which I think really can trump age, because you can have a younger child and they could read and do their work at a higher level than a child of their age typically does, and that really does close in that age gap. So that's why I would say ability level is probably more important than age, but both are something that you want to consider. And the last thing you want to consider is the subject, because we teach a lot of subjects in our homeschool. I'm sure you do as well, and you want to see which subject is actually reasonable to combine these children. So in our homeschool, math would never be something we would be able to combine, but I know in someone else's homeschool you might be able to do that. For me personally, I was looking to combine my boys for history. History was one of those subjects where honestly, I was really bored, but I could see that it had fun potential, and that's what I was going to try to bring into our homeschool, some kind of fun, something enjoyable, something different than the textbooks, and that's why I wanted to choose history as my jumping off point for combining my children of multiple ages. Now, I want you to hear me here, something really important, and that is that I was looking at changing one thing in our homeschool. I wasn't overhauling our entire homeschool. I'm not really a big fan of like a total massive overhaul, big changes. Homeschooling was enough of a change for us after leaving the public school system. And so I wasn't looking at just changing everything, but I did want to try something new. I was restless and I wanted to try something new. So I decided that unit studies would be a great way to go. I was going to create these amazing history unit studies. And I also found, after thinking, okay, this is the direction we're going to go in, that unit studies are a lot of work to prepare. And I don't know if I just lack that superpower or the passion or the talent or all of it, but I soon learned that unit studies were not going to be for us. I did end up finding material to support us in this change, and that was Bookshark's literature-based history programs. And we have so enjoyed making that change in our homeschool, so much so that 4 years later, we are still doing it. And one of the things we really enjoyed is, honestly, their programs are divided up by levels, because when I was looking at combining my boys, there was no way I was going to put them in a textbook for history. First of all, because we'd been doing that and I was bored with that. And second of all, which textbook would I have chosen? I had a 3rd grader and a 6th grader. Where do we land on which textbook we're going to use? I had no idea. So I really appreciated that Bookshark divided their programs up into levels. They had suggested age ranges for each level. That made it really, really easy. But I also love that we were getting out of that textbook. We were going to do this literature-based history program because honestly, you guys, I really wanted to read to my children, read aloud to my children more than what I was doing. I think in our first 2 years of homeschooling, I think I only read 2 books aloud. 2 books in 2 years. But honestly, our schedule was so full with everyone being in different subjects and in different textbooks. I honestly looked at reading aloud as one more thing to try to fit in, and I didn't have time for it. So let me tell you, because I said that this has been something that we've been doing in our homeschool for 4 years now, and I have found some real benefits to combining children of multiple ages, even if it's just for one subject like we did. And the first thing is, it can be a time saver. Let's face it, if you are used to spending your time instructing one child with this material and then instructing another child with this material, it's double the time. So if you can do it 2 kids, 1 time, you're killing 2 birds, 1 stone, it can be a time saver for sure. It can also be a money saver. Now that's going to depend on what you've been spending on your materials. For me, we were getting workbooks for each kid. We were getting the textbooks, obviously, for each kid. There was a workbook key. There was a teacher's manual that was like the textbook, and then we had the test and the test keys. So we had a lot of materials for every subject for every kid. So it can definitely save you money if you combine your kids on something. I don't know any homeschoolers that don't want to save money. Now, saving time is great and saving money is great, but by far the biggest benefit that I've seen by combining my younger 2 children to work in history together has been that they are together. And I know that sounds a little bit weird because you're probably thinking, well, you homeschool, you're always together. And we are under the same roof. But I've really looked at our homeschool and realized, like, we're all on different pages. Everybody's learning different things in math. Everybody's learning different things in science. We were all over the place. And at least for history, my younger 2 boys, we started with American history, were learning about the same things every single day. Because even if they had both been in an American history textbook that was appropriate for their grade level, chances are we wouldn't have been learning about the exact same topic in American history. So this was a time that we came together and we actually learned about and discussed the same topic. And also, I've seen something that I didn't expect. I know that I can observe my kids' strengths. So when we're discussing something one-on-one, I will get to see, oh yeah, he reasoned that really well. But they don't get to see that with each other if we're always doing things separately. And I have to tell you, it's really been nice to watch my middle son observe my youngest son when we're having discussion time, when I stop and ask a question. We've all learned, if you want to recall something from earlier in the book that I'm reading, you just ask my youngest. My youngest has a great memory, and he can remember what happened in the 1st chapter, the 3rd chapter, so much better than I can, and better than my middle son can. But my middle son is way better at making predictions, and his little brother gets to see that, and respect that about him. And I love that they're able to observe each other's strengths. That's something that they were not doing before. So the fact that we take the time and we connect and do a subject together, they both get to see and appreciate that about each other. So that's my pitch for combining children of multiple ages, because honestly, it has been a game changer in our homeschool, so much so that we're still doing it 4 years later, and we've even found that there are some other areas where we can combine our boys. Geography was already integrated into our Book Shark material, so they're combined there, and we combine their vocabulary. We have some shared resources for some other subjects, and so we have really enjoyed that, and it's helped us a lot with our homeschool routine, which is the next thing that I want to move into, because when you have children of multiple ages, it's important to have a good routine so that your homeschool day will flow smoothly, or as smoothly as possible. So here's what I've learned in the last several years of homeschooling children of multiple ages. First, it's important to have some group subjects, some things that you can hit multiple kids at the same time. And so it just cuts that instruction time down for you. Another thing that's important is to have some things that your children can do completely independently, kind of self-instruct. And then you have those one-on-one subjects that you're required to be there, you're required to instruct. And it's important to look at those things and figure out how you can schedule those in your homeschool day to allow for the best flow. Now, I'm going to give you a tip here when we're talking about group subjects, because I've shared with you guys history was where we started out, but we have a couple of other things that we do together as well. And what I have found is if you're going to have a group subject or subjects, the best thing to do is to start those group subjects first thing in the morning. Now, the reason I say that, or whenever you start your homeschool day, the reason I say to start with the group subjects is because if you get started separately in anything else, most likely you're going to be interrupting someone. The chances of your youngest, you finishing up with your youngest maybe in spelling, and your middle one who is working on the computer on math at the same time are slim. So you're either going to be sitting, wasting time, waiting on someone to finish up so that you can come together for those group subjects, or you're going to be interrupting someone and saying, can you stop that for a little bit so I can pull you over here and do the group work, which we don't want to do. So I have found that the best thing to do is just go ahead and start as a group, spend that time together, and then we can break away and do our other subjects. One of the things I do is I specifically look for materials that will help my boys work independently. So at the time when I had 2 older children in my homeschool, I'm looking for materials that I know they can sit down, it's either on the computer or something they can self-instruct, and that frees me up while they're working on those things independently. Even if it's something I'm going to check at the end of the day, it's something they can get started on their own. And that's the time that I spend one-on-one with whichever child of mine needs the most one-on-one from me. And in my homeschool, and probably in your homeschool, it is my youngest. My youngest still needs me to instruct him in, goodness, almost all of the subjects. He has some things that he can do kind of independently, but I mostly still instruct all of his work. So that means I use the whiteboard and I teach that math lesson, and I sit down and read the science material with him. So I'm still doing those things with him. He just needs that support. It's an encouragement to him. It helps him stay on track. And honestly, I'm happy to do it. So while I am doing that, usually the older siblings are working on something independently, but I do have a tip for how to make the most of that one-on-one time. At least it's worked for us in our homeschool. And that has been just doing the instructing. Now, what I mean by that is I will take a subject, let's say math, and I teach the new concept on our dry erase board in our homeschool room. And I make sure, okay, do you have this? Do you understand it? Great. Those practice problems are for later in the day, and we close the book. And I have found that this is so important, because if I go over the math concept and then I say, all right, work on your practice problems, and I try to bounce over to another kid, that's what leaves me feeling like a ping pong ball. That's what leaves me bouncing back and forth all day. So what I do is whatever my son needs me to instruct, I instruct one after the other. So when we get done with just teaching that new math concept, we close that book, we put it aside, and now we're on to science. Okay, we've read our science section, you know which questions you're going to answer after, and you can answer those later. Let's go ahead and close that. All right, let's talk about grammar, and we move through things, but my son doesn't sit and complete all of that independent work, because that's what I would call independent work after we've had our one-on-one instruction. And so when I get finished, I think it's about 4 things that I work with my son on each day, just one-on-one. That work is for him to do at any point in the day. And he's really smart. He always checks off the easiest stuff first. He just wants to get done with as many things as possible. And he knows that it's kind of, the rest of the day is in his hands. He can take a little break, he sets a timer, but he works through that independent work on his own. He's been instructed in everything, so now he is free to work at whatever pace is comfortable for him. Now, whenever my youngest son works on his independent work, that allows me to turn my attention to one of my older boys. My middle son still needed a lot of instruction from me last year, just a couple of subjects though, and so I would work with him while my high schooler was finishing up. Most of his work was independent by the time he was a senior in high school, and so he would just continue to work independently until I finished instructing his younger brother, which is much like with my youngest. I would instruct, let's say if it was math, I instruct the math lesson, but then we don't get into all of the practice problems. And then I would instruct, let's say, a writing lesson and make sure he understood it, and then he can write that whenever he has time. And so that's how we would do things, is just do that instruction with the one that needed it the most, on to the next one who had busied himself with independent work, and then usually my last stop of the day was with my oldest son, and that's when we would check our work. And that is what we found to be a good flow to our homeschool day. Now, even if my oldest son had needed some instruction there at the end of the day, I was fully available to give it to him. And let me tell you, all of that independent work does get checked at the end of the day in our homeschool. And I know it can take some time, but we do check and correct everything at the end of each day in our homeschool. And I want to make a point about just boundaries in our homeschool, because anytime I would work with someone one-on-one, so if I'm checking work, that's going to be one-on-one time, or if I'm instructing, that's one-on-one time. I'm pretty strict about not having interruptions. And I think it's really important for me, at least, to teach my children that they really need to respect the time that someone else has with me. And so I really try to guard against any kind of interruptions, because let me tell you, my boys are funny. We have 3 dogs. They're forever teaching them a new trick or watch this funny thing or whatever. And so I have really made it clear that unless you just need clarity on something you're working on independently, you don't interrupt the one-on-one time that I have with one of the siblings. I want them to know that they have my full attention during that time. I want it to be the most productive time it can be. And so I'm really strict about not having those interruptions. And I do try to have our day flow where nobody's waiting on me. But we don't have perfect days every day. Some days it does feel like that. Everything fell into place and we did it. Congratulations, another homeschool day done. But some days somebody finishes up a little bit early with that independent work and they are waiting on me. And let me tell you, my boys know that they have things they can do to fill that time, whether they want to get started on any of their afternoon chores, or like I said, we have 3 dogs. Go play with one of the dogs. They love that. They have to learn to be patient and wait. So it doesn't matter if everything doesn't go perfectly. I like for it to go perfectly, but if it doesn't, the boys have little things that they can fill their time while I'm finishing up with a sibling one-on-one. But it is very important that they don't interrupt that time. Now, I know I haven't given you an exact formula for how to homeschool children of multiple ages and make sure every homeschool day goes smoothly. And that is because I just don't think that exists. Homeschooling children of multiple ages really is challenging, but hopefully if you find a way to incorporate a group subject or subjects, you will find that that's a little bit easier. Also, finding work that children can do independently will free you up to work one-on-one with maybe one of your children that needs a little bit more of that one-on-one instruction. But I will tell you, there's no perfect mixture of it, because even in our own family, it looks different from year to year. So you might start really heavy with group subjects when the kids are younger, and you might start finding, like a lot of people find, that your older children start to work better independently, but you may still come together for 1 or 2 group things. It's just going to look different from family to family. But all I've done is share our family's experiences with you, and I hope it encourages you that you can do this. It is definitely challenging, but it is worth the effort. Now, I know I mentioned Bookshark material materials because we do use those in our homeschool. And if you'd like to know more about the programs that Bookshark offers, you can visit their website at bookshark.com. And if you would like to know more about my family and our homeschooling journey, you can visit me at my YouTube channel, Homeschool on the Hill. I share monthly updates and what we're reading in our homeschool and all sorts of reviews on my channel, and I would love to have you as a part of my online homeschooling community. I want to thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me today, and I wish you all the best in your homeschooling journey.